Welcome back to the discussion, Leading Forward, the link between higher education and our future government workforce, sponsored by American Military University on Federal News Network. My guests today are Dr. Marie Harper, the Dean of the Wallace Boston School of Business at American Military University, Dr. Karen Wolf, the Chief Learning Officer at Mantech, and CHANDA Chan, an MBA graduate and entrepreneur. Dr. Wolf, I'd like to ask you very quickly to start this segment off. How has everything that you've had to manage and to do um, impacted your ability to perform what every company and every organization has to do at some point? Even we all have to do it personally sometimes, manage crisis. So how has all this impacted your ability to do that?
Well, it's been a bit of a challenge, like for everybody. But since we manage crises as a line of our business, it basically was taking some best practices from one area of the business and then transporting it to other areas in the business. One example is that unlike some companies that have had a time struggling with the economy, we're actually growing right now. So one of the first problems that we faced is how do we completely change our onboarding process to be completely remote? Because we still very much were, we want to shake your hands, we want to hug you, we want to welcome you to the company, we want to buy you lunch kind of company. And that was our first experience with our new employees. Of course, all of that changed when we had to pivot and make our onboarding process completely remote. But it's not unusual for us to hire, 100 people on a Monday morning. So figuring out how to do that remotely was a bit of a challenge, but we moved to that fairly quickly, and we've actually seen the business grow. We've seen turnover go down, where people are not necessarily leaving; they're staying, and completely converting to an online learning format. I mean, we were 95% there before the pandemic, but we're 100% online learning now.
And speaking of learning, Dr. Harper, I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are on crisis management. What are you hearing from the folks that you deal with and the people that you work with regularly? You mentioned you went out to talk to some of folks in the business community not long after the pandemic began, but what have you heard from them regarding how they're dealing with crises?
Yes, JJ. I think for a lot of the people that I've talked to, this has been an exciting time, even from a leadership standpoint, because it's the unknown. They don't know what is going to happen. So they're exploring, taking chances, and looking at what does the customer want? What do they want in the new norm? And for example, I went to a Marriott and I talked to the general manager, and some of the things that she shared was they can't use their old systems where they planned out what reservations were going to look like.
Mm.
What they have done is they go day by day, and it's like whoever calls. She basically shared with me that I was the type of customer that they have on a regular basis. I just happened to be out on the road, didn't want to go all the way home, and decided to stop on the road and look up a hotel that I could stay at overnight. And she said that's the typical customer right now. So she shared some other things on how they had to pivot, readjust their way of thinking, and also pick up what I call seeing beyond the veil. And that is when you don't know what's beyond the door, that you come up with different alternatives and have three types of game plans in the event that what you're accustomed to do will not work.
Mm. Chanda, I'm not sure how big your company is, your organization is, but I'm sure there are crises that you have to deal with. Certainly, any of us who's bought a house or been engaged in selling a house, there are constantly things that have to be dealt with. And I'm certain that because of the impact of COVID-19 and the need to do most things remotely, everybody's been impacted by this. So, Chanda, I'm interested in hearing your view on managing crises.
Well, as an entrepreneur, you're always on the slow. Our company, Triumph Realty, is about 100 employees in, and we all work remotely. So social distancing is not a problem until you have to meet a client. And for us to manage these like emergencies and such in cases like a pandemic, we always carry on with us with the idea of like, be prepared. So and for myself, I always have a to-go box. So that to-go box includes hand sanitizers, just different wipes and gloves and masks nowadays. Whereas before, we don't think about those things. And always have to be cautiously aware of the homeowner as well as your visitors. So all the guests that has to go in there has to respect the space. And before we even have to go there, we have to make sure that they are, one, if they've been tested, that they have acknowledged that. And two, there's a waiver where we show to our clients that they can sign to kind of a disclaimer and disclosure that they are looking at houses or space within their own risk, knowing what's out there. So that's kind of our precautionary approach.
Dr. Harper, what are you telling the people that you engage with about this? What's the school? What's the school's view of dealing with risk assessment, and how are you teaching people to perform risk assessment in this new era?
JJ, we basically looked at our curriculum, added a few more risk management courses, and then also engaged individuals from other programs outside of the school to see what risk meant for them, so that we are approaching all industries. And to get into the courses, we have come up with feedback that we have received from industry. Like, I don't want to say case studies, but their stories about what has worked and what hasn't, so that it makes it real to them. We have an end of program course called ePortfolio, where we allow them to, it's almost create a situation, a crisis situation, and to address it from a portfolio standpoint, and to show how their education that they have experienced ties to what customers are currently going through, so that they can see that their education is relevant to the problems that are occurring in the workforce today.
And Dr. Wolf, workforce planning and continuity is a part of that subject area, risk assessment. What's your plan, and how do you engage on those elements?
At least half of our workforce are former military people. So we tend to take a very military approach to managing risk. And, that involves a lot of tabletop exercises and thinking through, all of the possibilities in terms of what might go wrong or what might go right. The other thing is that we manage risks as part of our contract execution for our government customers. So managing risk is in every single proposal. It's in every single contract. It's in every single piece of our business that we execute. It's kind of baked into our DNA that we have gotten very good at managing risk. I don't know that we were thinking in terms of managing a risk of a pandemic, but I'm putting that on my list of always things to plan for in the future, since it happened once, and I think we learned a lot of lessons from it, but it's something that I think we always have to be prepared for in the future.
I'm interested in your viewpoints on what the ideal is for an infrastructure for organizations today. We started off talking about this new norm. So as we look at the future here, look outward, what should the ideal infrastructure for an organization be? And the reason I ask that question is because I want to get into a couple of specific things. Should there be heavier emphasis on IT? Should there be more emphasis on human resources, capabilities? Should there be less focus on certain parts of the organization based on what you've seen in this COVID-19? What should the ideal infrastructure for organizations look like moving forward?
Well, we're in the people business, even though we're considered a government contractor. We don't sell widgets. We don't make planes. The solution that we provide are innovative people who are good at problem solving. So developing our people is basically the number one priority at our company, to grow the skills that they need for where the market's going to be in the next 3 years. We just released a new strategic plan that focuses on 5 technical areas, and my CEO wants 60% of the workforce trained by 2023. So it's very clearly an emphasis on developing our people as our primary resource. I don't think that's going to change. I think we're going to see a combination of remote work with in-person work, and see that trend continue as our government customers have become acclimated to out of sight, out of mind, if you will, that it's out of sight, but not necessarily not productive. I see that trend continuing. And again, I see those shorter work assignments, you know, the gig assignments, the teams that come together and have to, you know, lash up pretty quickly to be able to perform, get the mission accomplished, and then maybe the team departs to work on a new project or a different assignment.
And let me follow up very quickly. How do you think you can best empower employees using this new norm under these situations that we'll probably see for a while?
So I call it the buffet table approach. So I think the best way to prepare employees is to say, here's a video, here's a course, here's a micro-credential, here's a certificate, here's a 2-year degree, here's a 4-year degree. You know, it's like pick your own adventure. Because my workforce is highly skilled already. I mean, at least close to 80% of the company have a college degree. So it's not necessarily that they need to go back and do another degree. Maybe we've got that as an option on the table, but maybe their engineering degree is 20 years old. They want to go back to school to get exposed to what the new recent developments in technology are, or they may want to go develop an entirely new skill set. So that buffet of options is what works best for our workforce. And that's what we're planning for the future.
Okay, Dr. Harper, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. The workplace of the future and the ideal infrastructure.
Yes, I think Dr. Wolf has hit on a number of crucial points. First of all, I think in terms of infrastructure, it's not going to be one size fits all. And then I think the senior leadership will have to listen to the trenches. And from there, we have to teach our employees how to take control of their destiny and develop their own career plans. As Dr. Wolf mentioned, we have repositioned ourselves to not only offer the graduate, the undergraduate degrees, but also the certificates and the micro credentials. And we're putting emphasis on that. And we like to partner with organizations to say, what is it that you need? We have the curriculum and we can give it to you how your people need it. It's already developed, and we can work to customize it with you. And I think that's an approach that a lot of organizations are going to take, because I think the one lesson we learned is that it does come from the employees. The employees' development is very crucial in the success of the organization overall.
Performance, how do you measure that now? I mean, you don't used to be able to keep your eye on folks and do that in person, but how do you do that now?
I think I've always had an approach, especially with high performing teams, is that you come up with a quote unquote contract about what your expectations are. And then you meet up periodically to see if you're on course. In terms of measuring that, I would say that as you have those milestone visits that you discuss, are you meeting the mark? Are both parties happy with what is going on? And then I think that's an opportunity for people to grow, to say, this is working, let's continue the course, or this is not working, we need to do something different. And a project we had with an organization one time, we were a part of their performance improvement program, in that they talked to their employees, and then from what the conversation was, they would tell us what skill sets each level of employee needed, and we took our curriculum and customized it to those needs. And so the employees were able to go through the process only learning and only taking sections or modules of what they needed.
Okay, we've got about 2 minutes to go. Dr. Wolf, I'd like to hear from you briefly on that, just briefly, so we can give CHAN the last word here. But I'd like to hear from you about that same question.
So that really resonates with me. One of the things that Mantech did is that we pivoted from traditional performance management, where people were giving a rating in, categories of performance that were pretty much defined by management, to what we call career enablement. These are quarterly conversations between a manager and their direct reports, where they talk about, are you getting the feedback that you need? Are you making the progress that you want to? What do you need to do in terms of your learning and development? Do you want to go to a conference? Do you want to go to a seminar? Do you want to take a course? What is it that you want to learn? And those have been just it's been an amazing transformation of our culture. We just completed the last quarterly check-ins. We had 94% of the workforce was engaged in these check-ins. And what we do is we go back and we listen to what the employees are asking for in terms of conferences and seminars. Obviously, they're not going on an airplane and going to Arizona. We instead partner with some of our educational partners. We partner with IT education and put on a 90-minute seminar on the topic of trends in artificial intelligence. Or we put on a topic that basically we listen to our employees. What is it that you want to learn today? And then design learning around what the employees are asking for.
CHANDA Chan, we only have a few seconds left, so we'd like to hear your thoughts on how you're going to go forward, moving forward, looking at what's necessary in order to evaluate performance in the future.
With the pandemic and as an entrepreneur, I've learned that nearly every business have had pivoted its marketing and communication strategies during the coronavirus pandemic to successfully meet the demand of the relevant and helpful content. Many companies are relying on freelance designers and producing blogs and social media content posts. And throughout leadership, and I think overall, the education and the leadership of the higher education that I've learned from have taught me that what brick and mortar has not taught me is living in the virtual world and how to navigate through that virtual world. And I think with the change in the pandemic, we're forced to basically live in that realm and learn how to adjust and be more creative in our business. Whereas usually in a service-based business, you are having to, I'm a handshaker and a hugger. So with the COVID-19, it has taught me to keep our social distance and mitigate risk and reduce our connection with people by way of now replacing it with technology and Zoom calls and phone calls, which I really relish on is the phone call, which gives you a more personal connection.
I want to thank everybody for being on this call and on this program today. I'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Marie Harper, the Dean of the Wallace Boston School of Business at American Military University, Dr. Karen Wolf, the Chief Learning Officer at Mantech, and CHANDA Chan, an MBA graduate and entrepreneur. I'm your moderator, JJ Green, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search AMU.